I had never planned to be standing outside her apartment at this hour, breathing in the chilly night air like a coward who's just realized he's trespassing in his own emotions. The street was quiet, almost painfully so, the hum of distant traffic barely breaking the silence. I glanced at my phone again, as if it might suddenly justify the irrationality of my presence. But there was no message waiting. Just me. And her. Her name, Elena, kept replaying in my mind, carrying a weight I couldn't quite explain. She was in her mid-40s, confident in a way that made every casual movement feel deliberate, every smile calculated yet effortless. And me? 23, fumbling through my own life, feeling like a boy caught in a storm he doesn't understand. Yet here I was, heart thudding, hands cold and restless, compelled by something I hadn't named yet. I remember the first time I saw her properly. Not just as a face in passing, but as someone who could read the cracks in my expression before I even noticed them. It was in the small moments, the way her eyes lingered just a fraction too long, the tilt of her head when she laughed at something I barely said. Vulnerability clung to her like a second skin, though she hid it behind an elegance that made the world defer to her. I wanted to reach through that polished surface, to touch the parts of her no one else ever saw. Tonight, the hallway outside her apartment felt narrower than it should, the walls pressing in with quiet anticipation. I could hear her inside, the faint clinking of dishes or maybe just the hum of her apartment machinery. Each sound tethered me closer, like invisible strings pulling me forward. My hand itched to knock to announce my presence, yet fear tangled with desire, making me hesitate. When the door finally opened, she was there, framed by the warm light of her living room. Elena's hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders, catching the glow in a way that made my chest tighten. She looked at me, her eyes sharp, curious, and maybe amused. "You're here," she said softly. Not accusingly, just noticing. I swallowed hard. I couldn't sleep. The words sounded smaller than I intended, fumbling off my tongue like a boy trying not to break in front of someone who already knew too much. Her gaze softened, but only just. She stepped aside, letting me in. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and something floral, warm and domestic, yet tinged with an intimacy I wasn't supposed to share. Every step I took closer made my pulse accelerate, every small sound echoing my nervousness. We sat, a careful distance between us, though I ached to close it. The tension wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of quiet that spoke louder than words. The brush of her hand against the couch, the slight tilt of her shoulder toward me, the almost imperceptible sigh she let slip when she caught my gaze. I wanted to ask something, anything, but my voice failed me. And then, just as I summoned the courage to speak, she looked at me in a way that stopped time. Eyes wide, lips parted slightly, a heartbeat of hesitation hanging in the air. "There's something I need to tell you," she whispered, almost drowned by the quiet around us. Before I could respond, the sharp buzz of a phone interrupted the moment. A new message flashed on the screen from an unknown number. My chest tightened. Something told me nothing would ever be the same after this. The message on my phone went unread, forgotten almost immediately. Everything else, the world outside, the rules, the sense of normal, slipped away the moment she spoke again. "I never meant for you to." Elena trailed off, her fingers brushing against mine as she adjusted the throw pillow beside her. The contact was accidental, barely noticeable, yet it ignited something inside me, a spark I didn't have words for, and that terrified me. I cleared my throat. "To what?" I asked, though I already knew. I knew the history behind her carefully measured gestures, the quiet ache in her eyes that betrayed the life she carried. Divorce. Years of loneliness masquerading as independence. A heart that had learned to protect itself, even when it longed for something it shouldn't. And me? I was a mess of uncertainty. Just a boy trying to make sense of his own desire, fumbling with the knowledge that the woman sitting across from me could have anyone. Yet she had chosen, accidentally or deliberately, to let me close enough to notice the little cracks she didn't usually show. "You're too young," she said finally, almost whispering, almost as if she were scolding herself more than me. Her hand lingered near mine, not moving away, but not fully reaching either. Whatever this is, it's complicated." Complicated didn't even begin to cover it. The age difference, the subtle judgments she must feel from the world, the lingering ghosts of her past, these weren't just obstacles. They were walls I was tempted to scale anyway, just to be near her. I wanted to tell her that none of that mattered. That in her presence, my mind stopped calculating the right thing to do. Instead, I said something safe, something small. "I like being here. With you. Even if it doesn't make sense." She looked at me then, really looked, like she was weighing my words against years of self-protection. And in that glance, I saw vulnerability mirrored back at me, something rare and human, unmasked. She shifted slightly, the warmth of her arm brushing mine, the faintest tremor betraying a pulse she couldn't hide. We lapsed into silence. Not uncomfortable, but charged. The kind of quiet that tells you everything without a single word being spoken. My thoughts wandered. How many nights had she spent alone, wondering if she'd ever let herself feel something forbidden again? And how many had I spent wondering if I was brave enough to reach for something so out of reach? Then a memory surfaced, unbidden. Last summer, the park near my apartment, she had been there, talking to my friends, laughing in a way that seemed just out of reach. I had watched from a distance, caught between admiration and something deeper, wishing I could cross that invisible line without fear. Tonight, that line felt thinner, more fragile, like it could snap at the slightest touch. And then she moved closer. Not fully, but just enough. Her shoulder brushed mine, a soft weight that left sparks trailing along my nerves. She didn't speak. I didn't speak. But in that small, deliberate contact, something unspoken passed between us, a fragile acknowledgement that we were both aware of what we wanted but terrified to admit aloud. For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist, leaving just the two of us suspended in a quiet, delicate tension, where everything was possible and nothing was certain. I wasn't sure if it was courage or recklessness that made me lean closer, the faint warmth of her shoulder still brushing mine. The apartment felt smaller somehow, each sound amplified, the distant hum of a refrigerator, the creak of floorboards, the subtle hitch in her breath. "I shouldn't," Elena whispered, though her words lacked conviction. Her hand twitched near mine, as if it wanted to move closer but couldn't decide if it was allowed. Before I could respond, the soft jingle of keys at her door made us both freeze. My heart slammed against my ribs. She straightened abruptly, pulling a fraction away, her gaze darting toward the door as though it might judge her. "It's just my neighbor," she said quickly, forcing a laugh. But her eyes betrayed her. Vulnerability, desire, guilt, all tangled together in a glance that made me ache. I nodded, swallowing hard. "Right. Of course." The moment stretched, awkward and sharp. I wanted to reach for her hand, to hold it, to ground us in the chaos of everything unspoken. But before I could, another sound, a text alert this time, made her jump. She glanced at her phone, her face tightening, and I caught the shadow of something unspoken, a secret that she hadn't shared. My mind spun. The more time I spent near her, the more I realized how many walls she had built around herself, walls that I wasn't supposed to cross. And yet, every hesitation, every glance, every near touch was pulling me in further. I shouldn't be doing this either," I muttered, voice low. My own chest felt tight, and I knew she noticed. She met my eyes, and for a second, the world fell away. The line between what was safe and what we both wanted blurred. Our breaths synchronized without intention, our bodies inching closer in silent defiance. The air between us seemed to vibrate, heavy with possibility and risk. Then, unexpected, A knock at the door, sharper this time. Someone persistent. My pulse spiked. Elena stiffened beside me. "Who is it?" I asked quietly, though I already feared the answer. Her lips pressed together, a line of tension I hadn't seen before. "It doesn't matter. Just give me a second." Her hand brushed mine again, fleeting, almost apologetic. I felt the heat of her skin through the thin fabric of the couch cushion. It was a touch meant to reassure, to anchor, to confess in silence what neither of us dared say aloud. We both froze, aware that any movement might shatter this fragile connection. And then, in the briefest heartbeat, our faces tilted toward each other, not quite a kiss, but close enough that I could feel the temptation radiating from her. The knock came again, insistent, breaking the spell. Elena's eyes widened, a mixture of fear and frustration flickering there. "Someone's at the door," she said softly, voice trembling just enough to betray the calm she tried to project. I nodded, resisting the urge to close the distance completely. My chest ached, every nerve screaming that I should lean in, that this was now or never. But we didn't. Not yet. The world outside our bubble had intruded. And yet, as the silence returned, filled only by the residual tension of what almost happened, I knew we were both pulled closer, tangled in desire and guilt in equal measure, even as the walls around us tried to force us apart. I shouldn't have gone to her apartment again. I knew that the moment I crossed that threshold, the walls I'd built around myself would crumble. But something in me, something stubborn, reckless, alive, pulled me forward anyway. Elena was sitting on the couch when I arrived, her posture stiff, a book open but untouched in her lap. She looked up as I stepped in, eyes immediately flickering with a mixture of anticipation and caution. "You're here again," she said, voice low, almost teasing, but her hand trembled slightly as she closed the book. I hesitated. The words caught in my throat. How could I explain that I was drawn to her the way one is drawn to fire, knowing it might burn? "I couldn't stay away," I admitted, barely a whisper. Her lips parted, not with words, but as if she wanted to reply, to argue, to warn me off, but something stopped her. Instead, she leaned back slightly, eyes flicking to the window. "You don't know what this could do," she said softly, though the edge of longing in her voice betrayed her caution. I wanted to close the distance, to bridge the gap between her and me. But then I saw it, the faint smudge of lipstick on the coffee cup she had left beside her. And the way her phone vibrated with a name I didn't recognize. A surge of something I hadn't expected, jealousy, sharp and unwelcome, tightened my chest. "Who's that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. Elena's eyes widened slightly, and I caught that flash of guilt, quick, fleeting, but unmistakable. "It's nothing," she said, voice barely audible. But it wasn't nothing. My pulse quickened. The air between us suddenly felt thinner, charged. Every nerve in my body screamed that I wanted to know, that I wanted to claim some kind of truth from her, even if it scared her, or me. I took a cautious step closer. She didn't move back. Her hand shifted, almost brushing mine, and the friction sent a jolt straight through me. The tension was unbearable. She looked at me, really looked, and in her gaze I saw fear, hesitation, and desire, all colliding. "I can't," she began, then paused, swallowing. "I shouldn't feel this way." Her voice trembled on the last word, betraying every careful defense she'd maintained. My own hands shook. I wanted to touch her face, to pull her close, to erase every rule, every restraint, but fear held me back. Fear of ruining this fragile connection, fear of stepping too far, fear of loving too much. And yet neither of us moved away. We lingered there, suspended in the moment between restraint and surrender. Every heartbeat, every tremor in our limbs screamed that this was it, the point where something irreversible was about to happen. Then, almost imperceptibly, her breath caught. I leaned in slightly, instinctive, driven by the tension that had been building for hours, days, weeks. Her eyes closed for a split second, and my chest tightened. The world outside ceased to exist. But just as the space between us disappeared, the front door handle rattled. And everything froze. The door handle rattled again, firmer this time, and my pulse jumped to my throat. Elena's eyes snapped open, wide and panicked, her breath catching as if she had just realized the consequences of our closeness. "It's my ex," she stammered, almost too quickly. She said she dropped by to return something I forgot at her place." I froze. My mind refused to process the casual explanation. Every instinct screamed that this was more than a coincidence. My chest tightened, jealousy curling into a sharp, bitter edge. She hadn't mentioned her ex before, had she? And why now, of all times? Elena noticed the shift in me instantly. Her hand hovered near mine, uncertain. "I didn't," she started, but I cut her off with a shake of my head, not trusting my voice. "It wasn't just the ex. It was everything, the risk, the forbidden desire, the fragile intimacy we had been threading so carefully. And suddenly, all of it felt exposed, vulnerable, precarious." The knock came again, insistent and unyielding. Elena's fingers tightened around the edge of the couch, a subtle tremor betraying her usual composure. She looked at me, eyes searching, pleading for understanding, for calm, for a patience I didn't know I had. I should deal with this," she whispered, standing but hesitating. Her proximity, the warmth of her presence, made stepping away impossible. I wanted to grab her hand, to anchor her, to tell her that none of this mattered as long as she was here, with me. But the words wouldn't come. Before she could move toward the door, her phone buzzed again. This time, the message was from an unknown number. My eyes flicked to the screen, and my stomach sank. "Who?" I started, but Elena caught my arm gently, stopping me. "It's not what you think," she said quickly, almost defensively. Her eyes were sharp now, and for a fleeting second I saw fear, but also something darker, guilt. I wanted to believe her, to trust the soft vulnerability I had glimpsed before. But the tension coiled tighter, twisting with the doubt and desire that had been simmering between us. Something about her tone, her sudden briskness, felt like a wall being raised where the bridge had almost been. I took a step closer, my chest pressing against the edge of longing and frustration. "Then tell me," I said, voice low but trembling. "Tell me everything, or I'll imagine the worst." She swallowed, her fingers brushing mine again, not intentionally, but the spark was undeniable. "It's complicated," she admitted. I didn't want this to happen. But it did. And now I have to face it." Her eyes softened again, but the tremor in her jaw, the way she avoided looking directly at me, spoke volumes. Something had shifted. The fragile safety we had built was gone. I could feel the stakes climbing, the line between possibility and ruin narrowing. And yet, despite the fear, the jealousy, the uncertainty, I couldn't step back. I couldn't let go. Something in her, in that moment, the softness behind her steel, the vulnerability behind the elegance, kept pulling me forward. We were teetering on the edge of something irreversible, and neither of us knew if we would fall together or apart. The hallway outside her apartment seemed impossibly long, the knock now just a distant echo in my mind. I turned to Elena, who was frozen halfway to the door, her fingers gripping the edge of the frame like she could hold herself steady against the storm inside her. "I can't do this," she whispered, voice cracking. "I can't let them see us." Her hesitation was a knife through my chest. The air between us was taut, charged with every stolen glance, every near touch, every word left unsaid. My hands itched to reach for her, to pull her close and anchor us both in the truth we had been circling for so long. "You're not alone in this," I said softly, stepping closer. My chest pressed lightly against hers, careful not to overstep, but enough that she could feel the warmth, the insistence. I don't care about the timing, or the judgment, or any of it. I want you. All of you. Her eyes widened, shimmering with a mixture of relief, fear, and something deeper, something that made my pulse pound. She swallowed hard, as if she were fighting a tide she could no longer resist. I shouldn't, she said again, but her voice lacked the conviction it had before. Her hands, trembling now, found mine, and the contact was electric, grounding, terrifying, and comforting all at once. For a moment, everything paused. The world outside ceased to exist. There were no knocks, no phones, no intrusions, just the two of us suspended in that fragile bubble where the past and the future didn't matter, only the present. I've been waiting to hear you say that, she whispered, voice barely audible, yet it reverberated through me like a confession I'd been aching to hear my whole life. I couldn't help it. My free hand brushed a strand of hair from her face, tracing the line of her jaw, the curve of her cheek. She shivered, but didn't pull away. Her lips parted slightly, and in that moment the tension between us, the fear, the longing, the years of restraint, snapped like a taut rope. I've wanted this, I murmured, leaning in. More than I should, more than I can explain. Her eyes searched mine, a flicker of hesitation still there, but it melted under the weight of honesty, desire, and the shared understanding we had built over nights like this. She closed the final gap, a hand on my chest to steady herself, and whispered, "Then don't let go." I didn't. I couldn't. We stood there, close enough that our breaths mingled, our hearts racing together. Everything else, the age gap, the complications, the judgments, fell away. There was only this fragile, human connection, raw and real, and I knew that even if the world tried to tear us apart, nothing could erase this moment. And yet, the door was still slightly ajar, a sliver of the outside world intruding on our cocoon. We didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time, either of us cared. We had chosen each other, messy, uncertain, human. And that, finally, felt like enough. The world outside had not disappeared. It was still there, insistent, messy, and real. But inside her apartment, time seemed to stretch, holding us in the quiet aftermath of what we had finally admitted to ourselves. Elena leaned against me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. I could feel the subtle tremor of relief in her body, the way she exhaled slowly as if releasing years of restraint she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. I wrapped my arms around her, careful, protective, grounding us both in the reality we had fought so hard to reach. "I can't believe we're here," she whispered, voice soft but steady. "After everything, it's really happening." I pressed a kiss to her temple, my lips lingering against the warmth of her skin. "We made it here together," I said. "And that's what matters." The tension that had haunted our nights, the almost kisses, the stolen glances, the fear of judgment, hadn't vanished entirely. But it had transformed. It wasn't fear anymore. It was recognition, of desire, of courage, of something fragile but undeniable. We talked then, quietly, about the messy bits of life that still lingered. The exes, the judgments, the age gap, it all felt smaller now, framed by what we had chosen, honesty, closeness, and the willingness to be imperfect together. There was laughter, too, a relief that life could still hold joy even when it had once been heavy with doubt. Hours passed, but it felt like minutes. Every word, every touch, every glance solidified the bond that had been building between us, slowly, painfully, beautifully. And in those moments, I realized something profound. Love doesn't always arrive neatly. It doesn't wait for the perfect time. It comes messy, human, full of hesitation and risk, and it demands that we meet it halfway. Later, she rested her head against my chest as we sat in silence. The faint hum of the city outside reminded us that life continued beyond this apartment, beyond these walls. But in that silence, there was also peace, a sense that we had chosen each other, truly, fully, despite the risks, despite the stakes. I could feel her heartbeat against mine, steady now, unafraid, and it mirrored my own. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know how the world outside would react, or what challenges might arise. But for now, that didn't matter. We had found each other. That was enough. That had always been enough. And as we held each other, I whispered softly, almost to myself, "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Elena smiled, a gentle, tired smile, and I knew she believed it too. The story didn't need a perfect ending, just a real one. And for the first time in a long while, it felt like a beginning instead of an ending. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?